This is your RodCast, uh, addressing some issues in Waynesville, Ohio, where I live. We recently had a threat of a school shooting, and when you take a look at it as a parent, there are several issues that need to be addressed that I believe uh, are not addressed soon enough to prevent these type of things from happening. And one of them is uh, peer counselors. I don't think that we should ever have peer counselors. I know because I was one. And what happened was, in my situation, is we had some students who were going through some issues that caused them some mental problems. And in one case, the school nurse came to me and she asked me to go talk to a student because he looked up to me. I was an upperclassman, I was popular, and those type of things. And he was going through some issues with his girlfriend. And he went home and called her right after we had spoke. And we talked for a good half an hour. And he put a 12 gauge in his mouth and pulled the trigger. That conversation should have been had with a professional because I've had to carry that conversation with me ever since. 2 years later, a good friend of mine decided to follow me down a road of uh, sobriety and stability, and basically sat down and talked to me about the fact that he was going to have a child and wanted to do the right things. And he admired the way that I had been doing the right things. And so we discussed a decent plan of recovery of your life. And both of us felt satisfied when we got done with the conversation that we were on the right road. Unfortunately, she gave him some news that rocked his world about their future together. And he too took a 12 gauge and pulled the trigger. I had to carry that conversation with me for the rest of my life. So instead of addressing things with police officers who would have been completely ineffective in both those situations, I am pleading to both parties to forget about the NRA, forget about the pharmaceutical companies in the politics of America, and let's focus on communication. Let's focus on education. And let's have professional therapists sit down with these children and have these conversations because they're more equipped. They've prepared longer, and it's their job. So instead of wasting more money on things that are frivolous in our communities, I think that people like Chris Peters uh, should take the lead on trying to get more mental health issues addressed by these adolescents before they end up writing notes that cause our police to go to the school, scare the children, cause stress in the community. I think it should be a class that is mandatory for them to sit down with a student from a college who is working on a degree in psychology as an internship, and allow these interns to evaluate our children in elementary school, in junior high, and in high school, and follow their mental development so that we can provide a safer community and we can provide better services not only to our colleges but to our parents who are working, stressed, and too uh, occupied to notice some of the nuances that only happen when they encounter bullies at school, or or they encounter the fact that they're not mentally on the same page as the rest of the class. They're falling behind because of issues they may have at home. These are better solutions for the problems than enlarging our government, which is obscurely obese at this point, with more programs, more lobbyists, more campaigns, more candidates, and more of the circus that has become the United States government. I believe that we need to get back to that Jacksonian mindset that the government is the driver of the vehicle, and we have to pick the right driver. We cannot allow another session of Donald Trump's divisional sarcasm. We cannot allow the finger-pointing campaigns to continue in this country where that white America wants to build walls to keep struggling Mexican families from enjoying the same liberty that they enjoyed when they parked 3 boats outside of New York and came through and started settlements and colonies in Indian territory. This is the hypocrisy that causes racism. They don't seem to understand. The Indians told you long ago, these borders are on land that never belonged to you in the first place. And now you're trying to police the fact that people want to come and enjoy what has been built on the foundations laid forth by the native North Americans, built by people like my great-great ancestors, the Donaldsons, and President Andrew Jackson, that survived all the fear-mongering that goes on in the media about we're overpopulated, we're doing too much, so that they can sell stories out here. I know, I've seen it. 18,000 immigrants a day are coming across our border. We have to ask ourselves, why? Are they starving to death? Would you shut your door on a Latino mother holding her children that's starving to death as a Christian? No. Do they need medicines? Do they have disease? Is it something that we need to address from a Red Cross FEMA standpoint to brilliant, huge government programs? They're already there. We have to investigate the reasons why there's stress in Latin America. And I believe you're going to end up going back to a genius proposal by yet another Democrat, Bill Clinton, in the NAFTA proposal, where the North American Free Trade Agreement would have benefited the Latino economies if it was done properly. And you'll look locally at the General Motors and Fords and Toyotas who have left to go help stabilize that region. But we'll notice that the tariffs and taxes that are involved were supposed to be lowered. And that should have caused lower prices on vehicles, except conglomerate corporate America decided to keep the profits. It should have incentivized the Mexican workers. It should have created more education in Latin America. It should have been monitored by the United Nations so that America was held accountable and had to follow through on what the general purpose of the bill was. Today, we see the same thing in the Freedom Act, which is an effort under these Trump regime task force to enhance their ability to walk in our homes when we're not there without a warrant. It's hard to believe, and I think a lot of people don't do enough research on these things. It's a real thing. And they're going to bring it up in the White House takeover, I'm sure. If you take a look at the interview done in CNN by Vice President Pence, you can see the fear that he has for this country. If people don't wake up and start holding people accountable, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. If you go back and take a look at that Freedom Act, you'll see in Section 11, there's a financial responsibility as far as supporting terrorism. And it gives us the ability in the judicial system to address it by charging them with treason. And then once we do that, we'll find out that one of the big three fuel companies, Marathon Oil, is located right near Rob Portman's Golden Lamb in Lebanon, Ohio.